Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel where I will pick up where I left off in the last video with my upfront North Africa scenario. Apologies for the abrupt cutoff in the last video. I'm afraid my camera let me down again, but we didn't lose more than a second or two where I was going to moan about the Matilda underperforming and just saying really that it ought to start earning its pay and actually doing something about those Germans up there. Not that I can blame it. I think I'd said at the beginning of the video, the previous video, that is, that it was fortunate to even see a Matilda still in service this late in the war. So that poor thing's probably been wandering around in the desert since early 1941. So I should be grateful that it's still mobile, even if its main weapon keeps breaking. Another thing I need to correct is the amount of time the poor German Group B has spent lugging their infantry gun in lateral movement. Because while it is true that generally speaking, a group which includes an infantry gun has to play a sideways movement card before it can do any other form of movement and subsequently attempt to enter terrain. That does not apply if they begin in open ground. So in theory, the Germans could have occupied defensive terrain several turns ago. So because that is the case, I am going to allow them to immediately occupy the brush terrain they've been wanting to get to for ages. And it's also rather tragic for me because I was really looking forward to discarding this card on them and watching the devastated looks on the gun crew's little faces as their axles sank into the soft sand and they had to make a morale check on subsequent turns to get moving again. But sadly, there is evidently some justice in the universe, and I remembered just in time. So sorry, you guys up there, but you are in your safe terrain where you wanted to be now. Or at least safe from conventional attack. As soon as it's able to, I want my tank to start lobbing shells at you again. But we left off at the start of the next British turn. So just as a reminder, looking at my options, which are not amazing, need to decide what to do. Incidentally, I'm going to carry on keeping my Piper quiet because at the moment there's not much point to him playing up, attracting attention to himself in open ground. So he's going to keep his head down with the sergeant for the moment, at least until Group B has finished catching up. Now, the big question for me is what on earth to do with this card. Because it's a decent firing card, and my Group A could actually start chipping away at the German Group A with it, which would be a big step towards breaking their squad if we could seriously muck that group up. Alternatively, I could hold it and wait until the tank's gun is back in action, but I think I'd rather use it now, I think. So this group is still moving. I'm inclined to leave them moving for now because they still have the protection of the ridge that they're just leaving. I know the Germans can discard something nasty on them, but I'll take that risk for the moment. And I think I will, yes, get my Group A to fire at German Group Group A even, while my tank attempts to fix its main weapon. So here we go. Well, it's a very weak attack. It's 1 firepower point, and the Germans immediately negate it because they're hiding in brush, so it's 0. And just to quickly check the face-down German cards to see if they have any concealed cards, which unfortunately for me they do. The Germans are not taking any chances, so they're going to reduce my firepower to -2. So let's see whether I actually achieve anything by this. Private Schultz is okay. That was a good shot. The man next to him is most definitely pinned, poor Private Beck. And Private Wallach is okay. So, well, actually, the results of that were somewhat better than I was expecting, so no complaints from me there. What about the tank's attempt to fix itself? Ah, good news there too. Enough hammering and kicking and swearing has finally got that breach cleared again. So, okay, things are not looking too unhealthy. And my tank is going to get to shoot after all. Well, next turn. So what about what about the Germans? First of all, they've got to worry about Private Beck. Now they have a hero card and they have a Rally 3 card. The question is, do they want to spend the whole Rally 3 card just on Beck over there? Or is it worth sacrificing the hero card? See, these are the only two cards they have at the moment that rally people. If I were them, I would take the chance and use the Rally 3. Because it's nice to have the options that a hero card gives you. It just means that Beck gets straight back up after his little scare. They're quite happy with the position of that unit over there. But what they would like to do, given that my Group B is moving up, they would like to attempt to flank them, especially as my tank seems to be turning all its attention to German Group B. So hoping to remain unnoticed in all of this, German Group C is going to advance and see if it can take up a nice position to start raking my Group B. And they will leave it there and just draw some fresh cards, which, as ever, as per the Banzai Solitaire rules, I'll leave face down in the German side of the table, and we'll see what they are when I take actions that may trigger them. So, still not that great as far as my options go. I'm going to keep my Group B moving. The fact that their Group C is coming up, possibly with a view to getting a flanking position, is worrying. But I'm not going to get too scared until they actually hunker down in some good terrain. And if they are looking to pull a sneaky flanker, it's actually best if I keep moving myself. My tank is going to attempt another shot with its main gun at the German anti-tank gun. So let's see. I mean, the range is absolutely god-awful. Actually, do you know what? I'm not too convinced we can do anything to it from this distance with armor piercing. It's just a bit too impossible, really, at this distance and with my gun's rather low effect number. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to load with conventional. No, actually we need to get closer. It was fine when they were out in the open, but it's not so good now. See, the great problem with some British tanks is they simply don't have the right kind of ordnance to affect infantry. There is always my machine gun, but that's not really powerful enough. And I've probably been playing this in a fairly wrong-headed way. So what I'm actually going to do is I won't take any actions this turn. I'll take a huge chance and discard that rally card, but I'll also discard the marsh card, because I want this German group to run into soft sand, which they cannot reject, so that's wonderful. Now, soft sand doesn't do anything inherently bad to their combat capability, but it's just a pain in the bum for them to get out of, and it doesn't count as defensible terrain, even though it does reduce the impact of high explosive shells on it. So, you know, any kind of HE will not have much of an effect landing there, but it doesn't count as defensible terrain. So let's see what I get. Oh, okay, not that helpful. Ah, that gully card may help. So moving over to the Germans. Difficult choices here. The Germans have got a buildings card in hand, a good escarpment, that it may be worth dragging their anti-tank gun up to, because from where it is, it suffers from the same problem as my tank. It's not going to land any decisive armor-piercing hits from this range. So, I mean, it can pop at my infantry with some effect, but its high explosive effect number is 2, so it's still a fairly weak attack. And the odds of hitting are a bit low. They'll have to have a think about that one. Because the other option is they do have this weak attack card, which may have some effect. And my infantry are moving. So maybe it's worth spraying them with those. Well, what they would like to do is start moving towards the escarpment because it's better defensive terrain than the brush. So having got to the brush, they're going to start themselves moving, lugging the gun. This time, being in brush, they do have to play the sideways movement card. While they're going to get some covering fire from their group A, which fires into my group B. So attack strength of 2, bumped up to 3 because we're moving, and reduced to 2 because we get some residual protection from the ridge. And I am going to reduce that with a concealed card to 0. I knew it was worth hanging on to that. So let's run through and see how the lads do. Private Tresham's okay. Private Willis is all right. Private Cleary... Oh no, Private Cleary has been pinned. Private Cottrell is okay. Private Gilfallen's okay. And Corporal Burns... Oh no, the good Corporal has been pinned as well. That's not so helpful. So that was actually quite a good shot from the German side. They're quite happy with that. They don't want to discard any cards, so they're just going to draw. So what am I going to do? I think my options are not amazing. I need to get these fellows out of the German line of fire first, so I'm going to tell them to fling themselves into that gully, and I will sort them out in a moment, which I think they quite gratefully do, because they've been manoeuvring for quite a while now. That's a fairly high morale German unit, but I wonder, given that that lot is at relative range 1, I wonder if it's worth me lobbing a shell in their direction just to see if I can discomfit them a little bit. Because I do have these super powerful cards. Do you know what? I might do that. I've got to free up space in my hand, and my tank has got no one else to shoot at the moment. So while the infantry gun doesn't present any threat while it's struggling to move, I'm going to take a shot with my tank at the German Group C. So the range is 1. Unfortunately for me, they do have concealment cards, which is not good news. So I find the range is knocked back down to 0 effectively. So here we go. Do I get a 0? No, I'm way off. Sails right over them and explodes in the far desert. But never mind, at least I've acquired them now. Okay. Slightly better options for me for next turn. The Germans are actually going to have a really quiet turn this turn because they've got lots of terrain in their hand now, but nothing much else that they can do by way of actions. So they need another movement card on this group to be able to do anything. So because this is a 50-50 chance of being open ground, they're going to discard it as being fairly useless. And they will just draw this turn. So back to the British. I think I've got quite a few choices. I wonder... See, this is taking a bit of a chance, but while everyone's distracted and moving and doing things, I wonder if I can chance pushing my Group A just that little bit further forward. I don't have any decent terrain to throw them into other than open ground, so it is taking a risk. I mean, I could use that as smoke. Maybe I should. But then I deprive myself of the open ground option. But then I do want to move. It's all the same effect at the end of the day. Yes, I am going to chuck that as smoke just to cover my movement in a bit. I'm going to play the rally all on my Group B just to get Cleary and the Corporal back to rights again. And I think my tank can just occupy itself worrying German Group C again. Hopefully it might make the Germans want to burn any concealment cards they've got. And it does. They have no desire to be shot at. So that, between my acquisition and their concealment card, it takes it to effectively relative range 1. So I need a 0 or a 1. I get a 0. Okay. Unfortunately, that does not go well with my appalling effect number, which with the effect of soft sand means that my final attack value is -1. So Private Schussel is fine. Private Schumacher is fine. That gets put out of play. And, okay. It landed close enough to make Private Streak burrow down into the sand a bit more and cover his head with his hands, but other than that, not very much impact at all. Let's just see what I get. Ooh, loads of movement options. Maybe it is worth me dashing my boys forward and winning the scenario by going for a terrain grab. Right, over to the Germans. Now, again, they're a bit stuck, really, for options. They have the same terrible choice with their pinned man. They can't really do anything else, but they've got a Rally 4 and a Hero card. So what to do? I think staying consistent, they'll take the same risk they did the previous turn, which is to just sigh and accept that the Rally card will be used to get Streak back on his feet. And just hope that they get more of them. There's certainly more Rally cards than there are Hero cards, let's put it that way. And so back to the British. Okay, I think we're going to go for a lot of movement here as we have the opportunities. So my Group A, under the cover of smoke, is going to make their move. So they're dashing up to relative range 3, well, range chip 3 now. My Group B is going to begin making their way up the gully, now that everyone's rallied and happy. They should be fairly safe there. And my tank is just going to keep lobbing shells at Group C, which the Germans are not taking kindly to at all. But unfortunately for them, they have no concealment cards, so they can't do anything about it. So the relative range is now 2, effectively, because I still have them acquired. And it's a hit. A weak hit, but still a hit. So, Private Schussel is fine. Private Schumacher is pinned this time. Handy. And lastly, Private Streak is fine. We seem to be working our way across them. Maybe I can pin Schussel next turn. We'll have to see. That wasn't too bad as turns go. And it looks like my tank will be firing again soon. Okay, I'll certainly take those. So over to the Germans. They're starting to get a few more options. And actually it's getting a bit dangerous because their long-awaited movement card has turned up. And they are going to begin flanking. And the flanking is going to be directed against... Who do they want to kill first? They've already got decent range to my Group A. So the flanking will be directed against my tank. Not really so much for the benefit of the ordnance, but so that the men can attempt to pin the tank and force it to button up, which will reduce its options even further. So they are already shifting in that position, so I shall get a flanking marker. And that means my tank could find itself in a fairly uncomfortable position soon. They're also going to play a sniper card well, they're going to discard the sniper card. But before they do that, it may be time to use the hero. They are going to sacrifice the hero card to get Schumacher back because he's a rather key component in their LMG unit and they don't want to run the risk of losing him. So now having done that, they'll discard the sniper. And the best group to discard the sniper on is probably... It's rather tempting for them to shut the tank down if they can, but the tank has not really been all that effective and they're a bit more worried about my infantry. So in an attempt to slow my big group down, they're going to throw the sniper attack at my big group of 6 men. So they are aiming at Private Cottrell. Ooh, okay. Sniper's clearly having an off day. Cottrell probably didn't even notice he was being aimed at. But I'm going to keep that handy because it'll be good to get rid of the German sniper if we've got nothing better to do. So back to me. Now, aggravatingly, I have no terrain, which is not so great. So I think I will. I don't really want to risk another movement card on top of that until I've got something good to basically to get rid of it with. I will have Group B. That last sentence didn't make sense. I don't want another movement card until I've got some decent terrain to play on them because I'm relying on that smoke to cover me. I would like to get Group B to see if they can get rid of the sniper, which they fail to do. But it does put another Buildings 3 card out of play. Now, what to do with my tank? I think the tank one is a fairly obvious one. I'm not too bothered about that flanking group just yet because, to be honest, I think the odds of them hurting me are about as great as the odds of me hurting them at this distance, even with the flanking bonus. So as I still have one of these cards, I'm going to throw yet another shell at German Group C and see if I can have any more luck trying to take out that LMG. They're, of course, not going to let me do that easily. So, oh dear, that is going to be a 0 I need to score a hit. Well, I have been drawing those fairly consistently, so here goes. No dice this time. So I'll just draw another card. Oh, long may the fire continue. So the Germans, breathing a huge sigh of relief at the fact that I've not actually been discarding any terrain on them, have reached their escarpment, are very happily occupying it. So the bad news for me is that thing can start plinking soon, although it may end up targeting my infantry as they're much closer. My tank is still very much at arm's length all the way over there. Just so you know, the Germans have a card that's got ordnance written all over it, so I need to watch out for that. But for now, they're just going to draw. They've got quite a few terrain cards, but they're not going to do me any favours by discarding them on me. For my part, I've got an embarrassment of movement card riches. So, I don't know really. I could start my tank moving, which would get it away from the flanking problems, but I've got no terrain to play on it, although I could just keep it rumbling forward, I suppose. Yes, do you know what? I don't seem to be decisions. Shall I fire another turn or shall I get moving? I'm going to chance firing one last time, because you never know. The Germans have no concealed cards, so it's a straight 0 to 2, and we hit again, largely ineffectively, I think. So Schussel is fine, Schumacher is fine, and Streak is fine. So we lobbed a shell in their general area, but being another unsuitable piece of ammunition, we didn't really do anything. So yes, I'm just going to draw a card. That might influence my decision about pressing forward. So back to the Germans. Yes, they are now in a very target-rich environment. They're going to do two things. They've got two firing cards. Their Group A is going to try and pop at my Group A in the smoke. And their Group B can't really bring anything to bear on me. I briefly entertained the notion of them cashing in that card to fire at Group B, but unfortunately we're still in a gully. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for me, we're still in a gully. And although we're at relative range 3 to their Group B, even with the hero card they have in hand, they don't have enough conventional firepower to do anything with that. So yes, their turn this time is just going to comprise their Group A trying to discourage my Group A. So that's a firepower of 2, which my movement is negated by the smoke. However, just to not take any chances at all, I'm going to reduce the strength of their attack to a 0. So Sergeant O'Neill is fine, and Private Hodge is fine. Nice going, chaps. The Germans in that case are just going to sit and ponder their options. Yeah, they'll draw a card. Now my tank is finally out of shooting cards, so it is going to put itself into gear and get moving, because it's falling far behind my infantry now. This does a couple of things. The German Group B loses their flanking fire, and it also means we've lost acquisition of German Group C. But I think it's worth it to close the range a bit. Don't really want to do anything else at this stage, so I'll just draw. Terrain. Ooh, lovely, lovely terrain. That's exactly what we wanted. Going to start worrying the Germans in a bit now. The Germans are rather stuck because they don't really have anything that they can do. Although as I'm moving closer, the the German artillery piece could potentially wound my tank. And as they've got no other options at the moment, it's going to risk a shot. So it's going to cash that in. The range is 1, but I'm moving, so it's going to be a bit of a tricky shot for them. Ah, they get a black 0, which is exactly what they needed to hit me. No! So their effect number, anti-armor, is 3. The relative range is 1, which makes it 4. And much to my regret, my frontal armor, if they reach the 4 threshold, is an immobilization result. So my tank comes crunching to a halt. And I think because I'd left it, I lose the well, there was no benefit to me being in the brush anyway. So I am now immobilized, which means if they shoot at me again, it's my flank armor. The only consolation I have is that being a Matilda, my armor's pretty strong all round, but the fact that I'm immobilized is really bad news. My tank is now going nowhere. And they have also acquired me, which is not great. Okay, I was rather hoping that that wouldn't happen, but I've got to hand it to the Germans. That was an amazing shot from their PAK-38. And terribly happy with that. They will just draw a card. Right, what the devil do we do now, boys? I think we're going to have to try and press forward and secure an infantry-only victory at this rate, with the tank providing distant cover. So as my Piper and Sergeant's morale is quite high, I'm going to fling them into the brush. So they still have a bit of cover. In the meantime, my Group B is going to burst out of the gully and find themselves on the crest of a rather superb hill. I mean, entrenchments on hills are not great when you follow the desert rules because of their rocky nature, but I'm not too sure we'll need to do too much entrenching. I'm actually quite keen to press forward. And my tank at the moment can do nothing except feel sorry for itself, so there we go. I've seen better options, but you'll do. Back to the Germans, they are now starting to get firing cards. So the tank is a bit less of a problem for them now, so they can turn their attention to maybe making a mess of my infantry. So my Group B is at relative range 3 to their LMG group, which means that they can very happily play this card on me. And they've decided they're going to do just that. It's the only shooting card they can actually, well, it's the only one they've got, really. So they're going to make full use of it now that we've emerged. So firepower of 3, -1 for the hill, but I've got no concealment cards, so this could sting. Here we go. So Private Tresham, oh my goodness, that, thank God for the hill, he'd be dead otherwise. But he is pinned. Private Willis is all right. Private Cleary is very pinned. Cleary's a bit problematic, as you can see from his morale rating. He's a man of very nervous disposition. Doesn't take much. Private Cottrell is also pinned. Oh no. Private Gilfallen is pinned as well. Ah, make it stop. And lastly, what about the good corporal? Ah, the corporal is all right, thank heavens. Okay, so 2 of us have still got some sense of what the heck's going on. And well satisfied with that, again, the Germans will draw. Okay, as a matter of some urgency this turn, I am going to, part of me says break down and have a good cry, but I don't think that will help the situation very much. I think what I ought to do is I can leave the tank for now. I wonder if it's worth the good sergeant trying to do horrible things to the German Group A with that weak firing card, while I start rallying the boys here. Yeah, I think that's as good a plan as any, so let's do that. So, Sergeant, Private Hodge, see what you can do about that gang over there. The Germans have no concealment cards, so between the fire strength of 1 and the fact that the target is in brush, it's a straight 0. So Private Schultz is fine. Private Beck is all right. And Private Wallach is all right. Okay, we didn't really achieve anything with that. Never mind. I will rally. I think on account of his firepower, we really want Gilfallen back. And I might bring back Private Tresham, because him and Cottrell, on account of their morale values, are a tiny bit more valuable to me than Cleary. No offense, Cleary. Okay, let's see what we get. Ooh, we might be getting more tank fire. Thank you. Needed one of those, that's for sure. The Germans again have a quiet turn because they have a ton of terrain in their hand and the ubiquitous hero card, but nothing to do with it. So they are just going to discard a brush card and hope they get something better next turn. And that, incidentally, has emptied the first deck. So it is going to be the beginning of deck 2, which also means I have to make the Sandstorm random draw. If I draw a red 6, the scenario ends extremely abruptly as the weather closes in. So let's see what happens. Nope, no Sandstorm. So what are my options? I really need to get the rest of my squad back on its feet, those 2 soldiers who aren't doing much. I do have some options though. We're at relative range 3. We generate firepower of 10 even with 2 pinned men. Not quite enough to use that, which is unfortunate. And I have no other rally cards, which is also very unfortunate. So what I might do, I might start getting my command group filtering forward, just to make the Germans a bit nervous. And I'll get the tank firing just to add to their nervousness. So my group A is creeping up into relative range. Well, it's creeping up into range chit 4. Which puts them very close to German Group A. And if I can get another 2 men up to that relative range chit and in defensible terrain, we are laughing. So I want my tank to try and clear the way for us a bit. I'll stop them faffing with trying to pot infantry with their main gun. They might as well try and take out the German anti-tank gun while they're still here. So the relative range is 1. Let's see what happens. Nope, we miss, but we have acquired the target. So now it comes down to a bit of a race as to whether the PAK-38 can knock us out before we take the gun out. And following that, I shall just draw my cards. Turning over the card they drew last turn, the Germans still have a lot of disappointing stuff. They've got no firing cards, they've got no movement cards. All they have is a mix of terrain and a weak rally card and a hero card. So they're going to carry on their policy of just discarding terrain into the deck. There's no way they're going to give any of their helpful terrain to me. So they're just going to sit tight and wait on developments. Now I've got a flank card which is really nice, and I'm tempted to use it after I use the rally card. We'll see how it goes. Just to be really cautious, I may chuck some smoke on myself there, just to give us that added level of concealment. And I'll certainly be rallying my two other squad mates down there, because we really can't afford to lose men. Okay, I think that's pretty much all I can do for the moment. Ooh, more movement. That's quite handy. And more rally cards. I bet I'll just go through a bit of a dearth of shooting cards now. Ah, Germany, unfortunately, does not have that problem. So, what are their options? Group C does not, German Group C doesn't have enough firepower to use that card, although it is a black one. Actually, it might be worth them doing this. They're going to play the hero card on Private Schussel to make his firepower truly scary. And they're going to play that card at my group on the hill, just as I thought things were looking up. So their firepower of 4 is reduced to 3 because of the cover I get from the hill, and I'm going to conceal myself to knock it down to 2. That's still rather worrying, but let's see what happens. Private Tresham is pinned again. Private Willis is okay. Private Cleary is amazingly okay. So is Private Cottrell. Ah, Gilfallen with the Bren gun is pinned again. That's not what I wanted. And Corporal Burns is dead. Oh my gosh, they've got the Corporal. That was not cool, guys. I mean, I know we killed your Corporal earlier in the game, so I suppose all's fair, but that wasn't cricket. So let me just find a dropped weapon counter for the poor Corporal. Unbelievable. Well, there goes a precious fellow I really can't afford to lose. But thankfully for me, the Germans are going to do nothing else that turn. That is actually quite a relief. So, what am I going to do about this other than foam at the mouth? Well, I shall certainly be rallying those boys again. I just hope this doesn't descend into a cycle of me rallying and them pinning me again, because otherwise it's not going to be much fun. And I think that's all I can do at the moment. If that hadn't happened to me, I would have thought of getting them on the move to flank one of the German groups, but sadly that's not going to happen now. Ooh, we have a Wadi, so it could be worse. Ah, the Germans have options again. They're thinking it might be worth them shifting again just to try and get their gun away from the threat of being obliterated by my tank, really. The only group I have that's close to them is my group A, with fairly weak firepower, and they're moving in smoke. The Germans do have another escarpment, which would be pretty useful, and a hill, actually, which is not too bad either. So, yes, they're going to do that. They're going to start laboriously hauling their gun out again, which means that both sides lose their acquisition on each other. And meantime, German Group C is going to have a pop at my Group B, just to give their Group B some covering fire. So 3, reduced to 2 by the hill, and I have no concealment cards. Wish me luck, everyone. Private Tresham, yes, more incoming fire. He's fine. Private Willis is fine. Private Cleary, oh dear, poor fragile Private Cleary. He's hugging the ground again. Private Cottrell is also following Cleary's sensible example, given how many bullets are flying. And yep, Private Gilfallen has decided that discretion is the better part of valour as well. Oh no, is all I can say. Thankfully, that's the end of the German turn. So what can I do about this? Probably not a huge amount, I don't think. I have no rally cards, so this is getting a bit bad now. I am going to duck my Group A into a stream. Really just, well, not a stream, a wadi, just to avoid the threat of German discards. These guys can't rally, but I wonder if they can shoot. Yes, let's gain some measure of vengeance. So I think it's worth us shooting at German Group C just to try and suppress them. So yes, they get no terrain effects but modifiers from being in soft sand, so we're going to get some revenge and shoot back. Do the Germans have... The Germans have no defensive concealment cards, so our firepower's bumped up to 1 for being on the hilltop, so it's 4. Let's see if we can finally shut them up for good. Private Schussel is all right, sadly. Private Schumacher is pinned. And Private Streak is fine. Oh, all right. Could have been better, could have been worse. And I'm just going to draw some cards. Okay, back to the Germans. They're going to annoy me intensely by immediately rallying Private Schumacher. And I think that's all they can do for the moment. They do have a very strong firepower card in their hand, but they don't yet have the capacity to use it. They need to finish getting their infantry gun back into some decent terrain. They're actually planning on moving it a bit further forward. However, now that Schumacher's okay, they might turn their attention to using that again next turn, depending on what they get. So I'll draw a card for the Germans. I'm going to leave this one there for the moment and pick it up again a bit later. So I'll be uploading a third video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed that. The battle is certainly getting a lot more tense as the two sides draw closer together. We've each lost a man now, which is particularly worrying for me because my break threshold is significantly easier to attain than the Germans is. So we'll see how this goes. Also, the crippling of my tank is another serious loss. So it just remains to me to say, as always, thank you very much for following this series. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it interesting. Huge wave to all my fellow upfront veterans whose company, as always, it's really awesome to have. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video, and I really look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.